episode 98 of the Joomla podcast, and this podcast episode I'm joined with John Pitc, who joins me on the podcast to talk about productivity and things that he changed in his business and his daily working life to make his business grow from a single person solo business to where it is now.
Latest Joomla news, design tips, marketing ideas, and interviews with experts in the industry.
Beginner or professional, this podcast is for Joomla enthusiasts.
Welcome to the Joomla Beat podcast with your host, Peter Buey.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Joomla Beat podcast, the podcast all about designing, developing, managing, and marketing your Joomla website. This episode I have a couple of news updates in regards to what's happening in the Joomla industry, a couple of things that you may not have noticed yet, and of course my guest John Pitc, who joins me to talk all about little things that he did. Oh, not little things, actually pretty big things that he did to his business that included productivity and how he actually dealt with his time to better build up his business, get better clients, and produce better work. So he joins me on the podcast a little bit later, so you can skip forward to that. But before we get into anything, I'd just like to do a big shout out to our hosting sponsor, the guys that host so many Joomla websites around the world, and that is SiteGround. If you want to find out more about their services, their awesome uptime, their amazing customer service in regards to getting back to tickets, etc., you can find out more at joomlabe.at/SiteGround, and there you can find a detailed report and links and blog posts I did all about SiteGround, all the pros that you can get from hosting with SiteGround as well. Now, of course, we also get a small percentage of the sale from the signups through SiteGround as well. So if you want to support the show in any way, that's probably a really good way of doing it. Not only will you get some awesome hosting, but you'll also help out the Joomla Beat podcast and keep it up and running. All right, so let's get into some Joomla news for this week.
Looking for more Joomla tips and industry news? Joomlabe.at. Web hosting by SiteGround.
So first off, if you haven't noticed, Joomla.org has had a little bit of a facelift. Not a major cosmetic facelift, but just a couple of, nips and tucks here and there. It's finally been upgraded to the latest version of Joomla, as well as being modified to be completely responsive as well. So that was thanks to the team that worked on that. I'll post up the links to the report and the updates about this, and all the people that helped out in regards to getting that to the latest version of Joomla, and also upgrading the templates to the latest standards as well. It's looking quite sharp, looking quite good as well. So if you did notice, do a big shout out for the team there that put that all together, and I'll put in a pre-crafted tweet so that you can just simply go to the show notes for this podcast episode and hit retweet and thank the entire team that worked on that particular project to upgrade the site. It looks much, much better from where it was, and finally looking quite good and responsive too. The other news, this one's a little bit of an old one, which I didn't mention in previous podcast episodes, and that is the RFP, or the request for proposal, in regards to the Joomla video training site. Now, this is put together by OSM, Open Source Matters, and it's a new initiative to try and get more video training material at training.joomla.org. So they're looking for an organization that will put together a whole lot of free training material for anyone that's using Joomla for the first time. Now, this is fantastic for the project in general, in that anyone that's getting into Joomla and wants to learn and understand more will have a massive video library of step-by-step guides in regards to how to set up Joomla, how to work through different various workflow processes and get things up and running. That's really, really cool. The benefit for the person or the company that actually does is that they can upsell or sell on further training courses from that initial free training courses that you'll get at training.joomla.org. Now, you can find out more about this RFP on joomla.org, or go to the Open Source Matters website where you can find the detailed RFP PDF that you can download from there. Now, last but not least, if you're in the Oceanic or Southeast Asia area, Joomla Day Brisbane is coming up this weekend on the 10th and 11th of October. And I'll be there with a whole bunch of other people from around Australia. And also, I've heard a couple of special international guests are coming as well through Southeast Asia. It's a 2-day event, a little bit of a different format compared to other Joomla days that I've been to before, where its morning sessions are lectures and presentations, and the afternoon sessions are all workshops. A little bit of a mix-up, and that goes over 2 days. It's being held at the Brisbane State Library, which I've been told is a fabulous location. And you can find out more information about this at joomladay.org.au. So if you're in the area and you're free this weekend, you can still buy tickets and you can still make your way over there to visit and see what Joomla Day Australia has got to offer. Okay, that's joomladay.org.au. And if you have any questions in regards to it, or if you're thinking about going, just leave a comment in the show notes for this podcast episode, and you can get to the show notes at joomlabe.at/EP98, and that will take you directly to the show notes. Right, so let's get into this interview now with John Pitc, who shares a whole lot of stuff about his business, how he got into the industry, and how he started to grow his business from just himself to where it is now. Okay.
Stay tuned as Peter brings his special guest to the table. The Joomla Beat Podcast.
So I'm joined on this podcast episode with John Pitc from Joomstore, all the way in Western Australia, on the other side of the continent here. So John's joining me on the podcast to talk a little bit about his history, how he started in the Joomla industry, but also about productivity and how he increased his productivity to help grow his business. So this is going to be an interesting chat about that and a little bit more about business stuff. So John, welcome to the podcast.
Peter, thank you. Thank you. And hello to all your guests as well.
Yeah, so could you probably start off and let everyone know how you got into the web industry and how you actually found Joomla?
Well, we're going back a while. I'm showing my age here. my first website was back in 2001, just a personal site that I uploaded more out of curiosity than anything else. I was actually studying for a Microsoft certification at the time, for an MCSD certificate. And a couple of years later, around 2003, a friend of mine asked me to build a website for him, which I did. And that led to another friend of his friend asking for a website. And by 2004, I took my first paid job. And I was still working full-time at this stage. And a little after that, the jobs were getting bigger and bigger. And so I started looking for a content management system. And that's when I discovered Mambo. Before the split, before the fork into Joomla. So I loved it. Mambo was fantastic. I tried a whole heap of different content management systems at the time. I don't think any of them are around anymore. I think one's called Zoop or something like that. But yeah, what I loved about Mambo was how easy it was to template. The template file was basically a HTML file, which is a PHP file, and you put your JDoc, load your module position, load your main component, and it was very easy. And started promoting that to all my clients. And from there, business started picking up. Next year, Joomla came out. And at this point, I registered a company called Viperfish Media, uploaded my own business website. And I took a risk with it because at the time, no one was actually promoting themselves as using open source. It was kind of like using open source was frowned on, like it was inferior back then. And I had a few discussions with people who really kind of put me in my place, if you like, about using or recommending it to them.
Wow, really?
But I actually took the plunge and put it on my site. I put the Joomla logo up there and promoted myself as a Joomla specialist. And literally, that was probably the best decision I ever made in my early career. And right from there, the inquiries just started coming in. And from that point on, I just got busier and busier until 2006 was when I actually quit my day job and became a full-time freelance developer.
Fantastic. So it was actually quite a few, about 3 years since you started your first paid gig until you got a full-time, I guess, freelancing career doing Joomla sites. Is that right? Did I get those dates right?
For quite a while, I was working days at my. I used to tell people, like, I've got a job I do for the money and a job that I do because I love it. And so the days were filled just doing my job, which is a completely different industry, and nighttime was when I would actually do all my work and do all my developing and a lot of my learning, because I was still only learning too. I've got to say, I was so green. I didn't know half of what I knew or should have known probably in regards to PHP and MySQL. And the big change came when a company contacted me in 2006 it was, and they said, we've got a whole heap of plans and a whole heap of work projects we're working on. We've got all these ideas for sites, and they literally threw all this money at me to quit my job and to work with them, and there was about 3 months worth of work. And so that's where I said, I just took the plunge, just had a chat to my wife. She said, yes, just do it. And literally from the day we made the decision, business just went crazy.
Brave man.
Absolutely crazy, yeah. And the arrangement we had with those guys was good. It sort of gave me a little bit of flexibility to still work on my own projects and at the same time work on theirs. And within 3 months, though, I had all these inquiries coming in, and I was just getting busier and busier. And they're all Joomla related. All these people that had read about Joomla or they'd heard about Joomla, or someone else had built a Mambo site for them, and then they needed some work done. All this work coming through just from people Googling Joomla or Mambo.
I remember back in those days, it was quite turbulent, I think might be the best word. Things were jumping around, the CMSs were competing against each other, and then the open source front was really competing against anything proprietary, anything Microsoft, essentially. So I think that was a huge advantage that any of the open source systems had over the proprietary stuff, and plus the cost factor too.
Cost factor, sure, definitely. I think in terms of security, though, the thing holding it back, indeed, some of the people I spoke to in those early couple of years was they would actually say, what about security? It must be insecure. It's open. The whole concept of things being open source meant that hackers could see it and could pull it apart and figure out how to get into your site. But in fact, the opposite was true. And open source has just steamrolled ahead now because it is open and it is freely available, and we can all contribute to it and make it better. And I think that's why now most of the web runs on PHP, MySQL, open source content management systems. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Well, you think about it, if we're digressing a little bit, but if you think about it, an open source platform can have 1,000 developers working on the core code at any one time. For the equivalent company to pay 1,000 employees to work on their code base will cost them a fortune, an absolute fortune. I can't see an economy actually being able to compete with an open source platform in the long run.
No. Okay. And you see situations where there might be an issue or a security issue is identified, and within 24 hours there's an update published and released. And I think a lot of commercial developers, Microsoft or Apple even, I don't think they can respond that quick. Whereas open source, we've got this massive community worldwide, and we can respond that quick.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah.
That's why we're all still using Joomla. It's great.
That's why we're all massive advocates, yes.
Yes. So your business is growing. You're doing really well. You're getting this awesome 3-month gig, which is let you take the plunge into completely committing to your business, and you're getting more and more clients. So you're seeing a lot of growth in this late 2006 era, right?
Yeah. One of the issues that I had, and there's a blog post just published on my blog about it, was that I was getting so many clients now and uploading sites for people, and they come back to you and they want, they'd ask you questions and you have to respond to them, and then new inquiries were coming in. And the issue was that I realised I was spending all day working but not actually getting any work done. So I was fielding inquiries or responding to emails, and I actually said to my wife, I said, I'm just working and getting nowhere, and working nights as well, trying to get ahead, and just feeling like I'm drowning in trying to keep up. And because then the pressure is on, because you feel like you're falling behind with your deadlines, and you've got commitments, and the pressure is on. So I made the decision, and something I still work to today. And I think, and this is what the blog post is all about. The one thing that makes such a big difference is turning off your email and turning off your phone when you actually want to do your work. And it sounds very basic, but it's something that's made such an incredible difference, because now I sit down in the morning and I check my email. I respond to who I've got to respond to. If there's any work that needs to get done, so someone needs an update or they need to post some content with someone, I'll schedule it in for the next day. Once that is done, once the email is checked, the email gets turned off, and that's it. I'd never go into my email again unless I have to. And same with the phone. The phone's off as well. During about 3:30, 4 o'clock, if I've finished my task for the day, I'll then check my email again before I finish up. But it gives you that whole day to do whatever it is that you had planned to do. And that's the one thing that's made such a big difference, especially as a coder, because you have to be in the zone. It's very hard to go from writing PHP and problem solving to answering an email with something that's completely unrelated, then try and get back into your PHP problems that you're working on again. You just can't do it. So you need to focus completely for an extended period of time.
Yeah, I completely agree. It takes me at least 15 minutes before I can get in the zone to do any decent amount of code and actually remember where I left things off. But I'd love in your blog post that you actually put on your website, and we'll share the link to this and the website a little bit later in this podcast episode. But you mentioned in the blog post that you were spending about 2.5 hours a day on phone and email. That's a huge amount of time every day.
It is. And one of the things, when someone sends you an email asking a question, I kind of feel rude just giving a one-line answer back. You want to put some thought into it and make sure you respond appropriately. So the same goes with phone calls, particularly when you're dealing with clients, because they've invested a lot of this is their business, their website. So when they've got an issue, you've got to spend the time with them. You got to care. You need to care, and you need to give them the amount of attention that they deserve. And probably the hardest thing is dealing with new clients, because you have to ask all the questions and you have to listen to the responses and probe, and it's very easy for a single phone call where people are talking about some new requirements for a website or something they want built. Mm-hmm. It's very easy to take over an hour just for one phone call.
Yep.
And so that's the issue that I was having. I was the developer. I was also the front person, taking all the calls and doing all the quotes. And of course, there's a lot more to running a freelance business than just doing what it is that you're good at. In fact, only about half of the time that you spend working is doing the actual work that you're getting paid for. The rest is admin. So what kind of tips have you learnt? What have you learnt over the years that you can give as tips for our listeners to try and combat that? Well, I think the biggest one is scheduling your time to deal with the admin side of things, especially if you are working solely on your own. What's made the biggest difference for me, again, so moving forward in terms of of time from when I first started, around 2009, 2010, I met who's now my business partner, Noah Greenstone. He was a project manager for an agency that was sending PSD files for me to convert into Joomla templates. He was their project manager, and we worked well together, really well together. He would write up the briefs with his customers, send me the work, I'd do the work, send everything back to him, and he'd populate the sites with content, and the customers were happy. He was happy, I was happy, we worked really well. He then moved to another firm and started sending me more work. And we started talking about, we should start a business like this. We should work together. Yeah. This is a great partnership. And we formed our own business called Joomstore in 2010. And that's been the biggest change, is identifying the fact that I wasn't good at all those other things. So I just wanted to code. I was good at coding, and I love the whole aspect of taking a design, even taking customers' ideas. I do all the actual design work as well, and turning it into something interactive and something that people love. But what I wasn't good at was the whole admin side and the people side of things, and my management skills in that regard. It took me a while to realise that that's not really what I'm good at. And that's where, if you can find someone like I've got my partner Noah, who now he handles all of that. He handles all of the client proposals. He does all of the scoping work, all the documentation, and I do all of the actual development work. And he also respects my time in that I'm not available during the day. We schedule every Friday is basically our admin day. So that's where we go over all of our proposals that we've got out, any projects that the timelines and all of that sort of thing. And we also keep each other up to date using Asana, which is a fantastic project management to-do list tool, if you like. So it's like a to-do list tool on steroids.
What was it called again?
Asana.
Asana.
Yeah.
Great.
And the great thing about Asana, I've got to say, is that it eliminates the need for email. We found emails were coming backwards and forwards. He'd send me stuff in email, I'd reply, and we're getting this massive email trails going backwards and forwards and over several days, and then things are getting lost in email as they do. Whereas Asana gets rid of all of that. Everything is tasks. So if something new comes up, Noah will create a task for me in Asana, and then I can just make comments on it, tick it off when it's done, and move on to the next thing. Everything can be scheduled, and it's very, very simple, very, very easy to understand. Even if you're just using it for yourself, I would still use it if I was working completely solo. I would still use it. Very, very good tool.
Sounds fantastic. I'll put up some screenshots and links to that in the show notes for this podcast episode as well, so people can see that. But have you got any more tips in regards to that growth and trying to grow your business in general?
I think the number one thing is to specialise in one area. So I think the biggest thing for me in the early days, particularly, was choosing Joomla as my tool and sticking with it. And today we're still getting just as many inquiries come through. Joomla is extremely popular. There's a lot of particularly we find non-profit organisations and shire councils and the like that use Joomla and love it. And we're getting a lot of inquiries come through from places like that. So pick your specialty and stick to it. And that's indeed, I think, particularly in the early days, because you don't want to be just another web developer or just another designer. There's millions out there. So
yeah, that's right.
Yeah. That's been the big one. And of course, do what you say you're going to do. Probably half of the projects we take on at the moment are fixed up jobs where people have tried to do something on the cheap, or another developer has tried to do something cheap, or they've not known what they're doing, or just not done what they're going to do, and they contact us to finish their site off, basically. So just always do what you say you're going to do, and always communicate with your client.
There's always a lot of those jobs around.
It's incredible.
Yeah, it's. I guess a lot of people just bite off more than they can chew, or don't understand the brief correctly, or just can't work with the client, and hence they get passed on. And people like yourself get more work. So it's not.
I think things like tools like Joomla fill people with a sense of power. They think this is easy. They can download a template, install it very quickly. Joomla itself is easy to install. Well, it's really easy to enter content, and there's all these plugins available. But then all of a sudden, they realise there's a limitation. They need to do something they can't do. They need to write code. They need to integrate things, and maybe there's an API they want to integrate with, have dramas with, and all of a sudden they throw their hands up in the air and they realise that they're not as powerful as they originally thought they were. They need some skill and some training to get things working where they want it.
Yeah, it suddenly gets a little bit harder. And that's probably where they could have partnered up with someone a little bit more skilled to take care of those aspects.
Yeah.
Yep. Learning as we go on this podcast. That's great. All right, so it sounds like the future of Joomla Store is going pretty well, and it's going to continue to do so. What have you got installed for the future for it?
Well, we're still business as usual. We've got a lot of projects on at the moment. We're finding that projects are getting bigger and bigger. A lot of requirements outside of the box, and Joomla's fantastic as a development tool. If you actually want to build something, the framework is magic. Absolutely love it. The framework is awesome for building custom functionality. So we're continuing along there. I've also got a extension that I've developed and supported called Focal Point, which is a mapping extension. In addition to that, I've got a brand new blog where I'm publishing new content on that to promote Joomla. And it's only a few weeks old, but that's the future. Is trying to give back in that regard and upload some tutorials and keep a lot of fresh content in regards to Joomla out there for people to benefit from.
Yeah, and you sent me the link last week, I think sometime last week. I was looking over it. It looks like a very nice site. It's very well designed, very well put together, and more importantly, the content's actually really good too.
Oh, good.
So that was my awesome Joomla website.com.
Yeah.
Great. I'll put up the links to that in the show notes too. And that's where I stumbled across the article about the productivity and you not talking to your clients as much to increase your productivity. How did your clients actually, we're jumping back a little bit, but how did your clients react to that when you put that message out on your blog saying, I'm actually not going to talk to you anymore or less?
I've got to say, I was expecting a little bit of... I wasn't expecting a good reaction. I thought people would be upset. But surprisingly, there was absolutely no negative feedback whatsoever. And I've got to say that in terms of the client's perception of your time, it's actually a good thing. Because they understand you've actually need time to get the work done. And I think if you're responding to every client request within 5 minutes of them sending an email, maybe they think you're available all the time and that you're just sitting there waiting for something to come in. But I find that people aren't worried at all if you get back to them the following day. And people are perfectly fine with it.
I guess also if you train your clients to get used to that as well and not responding in 5 minutes or 2 minutes after they send the email. But giving them some time so they get used to that. They know that you respond within a day.
That's right. We actually tell people that when they employ us or hire us, I should say, to do a job for them, they're paying for our time to build the site. They're not paying for a product at the end. Everything's based on time. Even our quotes state that it's based on estimate of time. And that's something that my partner Noah is very good at, training the client up front, right from the very first interaction, that everything's based on time. You want a new feature, it's priced up based on the time that it takes. And if you want changes, there's time involved with that. And we're not Nazis about the time. We're not extremely strict, but as developers, all we have to sell is our time. So we need to be strict with when we're working, when we're billing, and making sure that when we are working and that we are billing our customers during this time, that we are fully focused on them and whatever the task is that we're doing for them.
So how do you deal with scope creep or new features that your client might be asking for? How do you deal with that extra time that's needed and telling the client that this is going to take quite a bit more time to do than what we originally thought? Or how does Noah deal with that? Yeah,
I've got to say, this has always been a problem. Right from my very first days is scope creep and delays. And delays are easy to deal with because usually the delays is to do with content, getting content from customers. So we just don't do that anymore. We will build a site and hand it over to the customer. It's up to them to fill it with their own content.
Yeah. Or
we give them a price for it. In terms of scope creep, we have a clause in our contracts that says that, like I've just said, basically that the pricing is based on estimate of time, based on information gathered to date, and any new requirements will need to be re-scoped and costed in accordingly. And it does happen all the time. People come back to us, particularly once they've seen a prototype or they've seen the very first upload that you've done for them. All of a sudden they get ideas and they can see all these ways to make it better. But we always tell people that that's a great feature for stage 2.
Yeah, I love that.
We'll finish what we've got in the project plan at the moment, and let's just start making a list for stage 2. And that's all we have to do. We stick to exactly what was in the proposal or in the project plan, without going over it. So, as a freelancer, when I was working freelance, I found that very hard to do. And people would come to me and they'd want extra things. And I think, it's only going to take a few hours. I'll just do it. Whereas a proper project manager does it properly. He'll talk to the client about how much time's involved, and because we're running a business, we need to account for our time and we need to charge for our time. And so that's where stage 2 comes into it. It's always stage 2.
and maybe even a stage 3?
Often a stage 3. But we also talk about maintenance right from the start as well. A lot of our clients, a website is never finished. You can't take a website, put it online and forget about it. So true. It's never finished. So always talking about ongoing maintenance. And we have on the Joomla site, there's maintenance plans where we keep everything up to date. We manage all the component updates. We update Joomla. And in that, we give clients a couple of hours a month for anything else that they want as well. So they understand that they're paying for our time to do that for them, to look after that for them.
That's fantastic. I saw that very clearly on the Joomla store site as well when I was navigating through the menus. There's one specific menu that's just all about security and maintenance plans.
Security and maintenance plans, yeah. And you'd be surprised, customers like having that. They like to know that they're paying a monthly fee and you are there for them to do these things. And indeed, a lot of times I never even speak to the customers. I just do the updates. It's all automatic. And there's a lot of great tools around now, like Watchfully.
Yep, love it.
Yeah, fantastic service. You can do it all from all your sites can be managed from within one control panel, and really simple. So, and in terms of business, that's good for your business as well. Customers happy, that's good for your business.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they keep on releasing more and more features like a single sign-on, so you don't need to remember every last single password for your website. Yes. So if you need to jump in there, you can check something quickly. It's fantastic. I keep mentioning it in the podcast as well. So if people haven't actually played around with Watchful yet, please do. Again, I'll put that in the show notes.
Yeah, definitely, because it's definitely worth sharing. It's definitely worth letting people know about.
Right, great. Now, back to your blog. Now, I noticed that you're on the homepage of the blog, you've got this big email sign-up. So I have a feeling you're trying to build up a community or a readership of the blog there. What kind of plans have you got for it? I know you said you're going to push out some articles, really good articles and tutorials, etc. But you got anything else planned with that?
Well, initially, I've got a plan. I've got a content plan in place. There's a whole heap of articles ready to be published over the coming weeks.
Cool.
And a tutorial series using Breezing Forms and Iris Forms as well. Beyond that, though, I think further down the track, I mentioned earlier that we're doing a lot of work for non-profit organisations. I think there's good opportunity here to do highly specific courses for organisations that could benefit from a highly targeted courses to help them build their own website or manage their own websites. Because often we're talking about organisations that don't have a lot of money to hire staff. They can't pay web developers $100 an hour or whatever web developers are to keep their sites up to date. They need to do it in-house, but they also have staff that are perhaps temporary or part-time or staff that are changing. So I think it's a good opportunity perhaps to start promoting courses and highly targeted tutorials to organisations like that. So I think further down the track, what I'd like to do is build up a big readership and then start looking at who that readership is and then start putting together some very targeted tutorials and courses for these organisations that could benefit from it.
So is this online courses and training or in-person physical training?
I'm thinking online.
Oh,
Videos,
great.
Yeah, videos and PDF files and doing probably, I haven't worked it all out yet, but probably a timed, so like a 6-week course or an 8-week course, 10-week course.
Yep.
But I think at this stage, what I'm focused more on is producing good content, getting a big readership, and beyond that, though, I think what's more important is Joomla's missing a lot of the enthusiastic marketing from people that use Joomla and love it. And so I want to give back in that regard. I want to create a bit of enthusiasm around with my site and my blog posts and show people how easy it is to do things with it. Because I think there's that other CMS out there which is getting a lot of market share at the moment. Simply because
don't say the W word.
Yeah, the W word. Yeah, but I think simply because it's used by it's the go-to tool for bloggers, and bloggers are fantastic at evangelizing the things they like and talking about the tools that they use.
Hugely.
So it's like a snowball. It's just its own popularity is driving its popularity further.
Yeah.
And I think in a side-by-side comparison, I don't think there's anything that WordPress does that Joomla doesn't do.
Except for frustrate developers. But.
Which is interesting. I've got a couple of clients that have both WordPress and Joomla sites and prefer the Joomla sites. But I do think that Joomla has suffered from some bad press a few years ago, and I think we've hit the reset button. Joomla now is in a fantastic place. I think it's one of the most secure. It's really easy to use. It's really easy to develop for, and the only way is up now with Joomla. I think it's a fantastic tool. So yeah, that's what this blog is about. I just want to do my bit in creating a bit of enthusiasm around that. And so I hope it pays a visit and makes some comments and takes it from there. So yeah.
Glad to see it online and starting to grow as well. I regularly go to the Pro Blogger conference on the east coast of Australia here. So that's I think last year there were about 500 bloggers. This year is about 780 bloggers. Majority women. It's insane.
Yes.
I've never seen so many women in one place. But yeah, they all absolutely are in love with WordPress. They all use it mainly because they don't know anything else out there on the market. Every last other blogger that they follow that is doing really well, which they're idolizing, I guess. That's probably a way to say it. They're using WordPress. So by default, what should I use? I'll use WordPress as well. If the person that I'm listening and learning from is using WordPress, then I guess I will too, because they're doing really well, and they're using WordPress. So yeah.
And it was designed initially primarily as a blogging tool.
That's
true. It is a lot more than that. It is a CMS and it is very good. But I think being the go-to tool for bloggers, it has by default become very, very big and very popular. So yeah, but this is where Joomla sits in this place between the super simple WordPress and the more enterprise specific Drupal. So Joomla is in a great place for small businesses, town councils, churches, and non-profits, all these organisations that need functionality more than just a blog, and they need something which is easy for a developer to get into and make some customisations to without hiring staff like you'd need with a Drupal installation, for example. So I think Joomla is a really good place here, and with some good publicity and some good marketing, I think it's poised for. And I'd love to see it back where it was back in sort of 2007 or so. But I think competition's a good thing. You know, you don't want to be you don't want a total monopoly. But I think I'd like to see the popularity increase again. And I think Joomla is definitely one of the best tools for a proper CMS. It's magic.
Well, it's definitely a sweet spot there. It's being revamped. It's in such a good state at the moment, and there's definitely opportunity to really push it and show the world what it's actually good for now.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Let's wrap things up, John. Now, before I let you go, I just want to get from you, what is your favourite Joomla extension out there, one that you can't live without?
My favourite Joomla extension? Well, I tell you, there's a few that I install on every site. One is Akiba Backup.
Yep.
Thanks,
Lifesaver.
It's pretty awesome, and I could never hope to ever build anything like that. Magic, absolute magic. K2 is awesome, is really good. Probably, I would have to say my favourite is JCE.
JCE, the Joomla Content Editor.
Pretty boring responses there, I think. You know,
they're pretty standard for everyone, really. I think
pretty standard. Yeah, I mean, there's a whole heap of good ones. There's a whole heap of good ones out there. I could probably spend all day going on about different extensions, but yeah, they'd probably be my favourite ones.
Yep, definitely ones that we can't live without.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, thanks, John. This podcast episode's been quite enlightening. It's been really good learning your growth, how you've dealt with issues, and all those little hints and tips that you've given all of our listeners to hopefully, I guess, fix up or improve in their own businesses as well.
Well, I hope there is something there that people can take away. I'm probably not the best teacher in the world, but I want to thank you, Peter, for giving me the opportunity to have a chat with you and to share this. So thank you very much, and I'll be interested to see how it turns out.
No, thank you, John. Thank you for sharing your time and your story too.
Excellent. Thanks, Peter.
Awesome. Thank you.
Joomla experts, high-end users, creators, and, well, really, anyone you should be listening to.
This is Joomla Beat Podcast with your host, Peter Buey.
All right. Hopefully you got some awesome tips there. I certainly did. So just to have a little bit of a recap about his pointers. Now, one of the things that I really liked from his little chat before was finding your weaknesses. So John learnt that early on in his business, finding and understanding what he wasn't very good at, and finding a partner, someone to partner up with in his business that could fulfill those weaknesses and help complement and grow his side of the business. His other major point was speciality, or specializing in a particular niche. So he mentioned anyone can be a web designer, anyone can be a web developer, and it's a very broad term, a very broad spectrum of skills, but narrowing down to maybe a front-end developer, maybe a WordPress developer. No, not a WordPress developer, a Joomla developer. That's much better. Or even specializing in a particular Joomla framework. Maybe you like to work with Rocket theme templates, or maybe you specifically like working with Joomla Bamboo templates, or even Joomla Art templates. Maybe that's your niche. Or maybe you specialize in K2, using K2 to build sites, or maybe Warp 7, and that becomes your special speciality, the thing that makes you stand out from the crowd. So I think that was a really good point that John made there. And the last but not least, his point about making promises to clients. Do what you say you're going to do. So I think making promises to clients and not delivering is pretty bad. It could tarnish your reputation. Word can get around that you don't deliver on promises, or setting those expectations too high for your clients sometimes is a bad thing as well. So making sure that you're committing to your clients and promising to deliver what you can actually deliver is probably another really crucial thing that John pointed out in his realization and growing of his business over the years. Now, if you want to find out more about John and Noah, for that fact, you can visit joomstore.com.au to find out a little bit more about some of the projects that John and Noah have been working on and see what they've been building. But if you want to visit John's new blog, you can get to that at myawesomejoomlawebsite.com. Now, like I said, I'll put all of these links and show notes in the show notes for this podcast episode on the website, and you can get to that at joomlabe.at/EP98. Now, that's it for this podcast episode. If you're heading over to Joomla Day Australia in Brisbane, I'll see you there. Otherwise, please keep your websites safe and secure, and please make sure you keep them backed up. Okay, bye.
You have been listening to the Joomla Beat podcast, bringing together the community of designers, developers, fans, and users from around the globe. Joomla Be.at